Hello! Today we'll be checking out what's in this rather unassuming black little package from Eachine. But just before we get into that, a quick reminder to please like or dislike this video if you didn't like it. Comment down below, don't forget to subscribe, and if you can find that little bell icon, click on it. Who knows what will happen? Depends on YouTube's point of view. Anyway, this is the TX06 split camera. Now don't think split in terms of it's an HD recording and FPV camera. What it means, it's one of those all-in-one FPV cameras, but instead of having as normal the sort of VTX and camera sort of pushed together, an example would be here. This is a previous TX something. This is another Eachine camera. It means it's separated out. So let's open it up and take a little look-see. And it comes in this bag, and this is what you're looking at. It couldn't get more simple really. There's a very small, I think this is 11 by 11 mil lens. You've got this little VTX unit here with this little button on it, and the button will go through channels and bands. You've got this power adapter which you can I think it's 3.5 to 5.5 volts. They suggest 5 volts, and a little linear dipole there. Also in the box, these instructions which talk about the channels you've got and some wiring stuff. So there's nothing really special about it. There's no smart audio. There's no way you can put an OSD overlay on there. It's very much a sort of basic plug it in and you will see stuff. Now it says it's suggested it sort of goes in the very small whoops and stuff, which may be a thing. I'm currently locked down because I'm going for a knee operation in a little while, so they said don't go out, self-isolate. So I might replace this one with that. On this one I had to sort of stick it on top, but I could put this into the canopy underneath here and still get a fairly good view perhaps, so let's try that. But let's go to close-up first. We can have a bit more look in detail and we can see what that button does and how can we tell what channel we're on and stuff. Well, I have to say we're not off to a fantastic start here, mainly because of this. I looked at this and I thought, you know, that looks like the battery end rather than the sort of plug-ins you would plug into, and sure enough I picked up this little one, and you'll notice this is actually the sort of receiving end for that. They're actually wired differently, so we've got the positive going to negative and negative to positive, which is not the best situation. So I thought, oh, perhaps this is designed so it wants to plug directly into a board, but that's dangerous as well because the sort of pin size and pitch are going to be different, and I still think this is wired backwards because this, if it was the right size, would want to go in there, and ground and voltage is still round the wrong way. So for speed, although not particularly convenient, I'm going to take that end off, I'm going to put this end on, and that's so it will fit as a little 1S battery. Of course, if you were putting this into a flight controller, as you might, that's when, you know, to be honest, I think you'd probably take that off and directly solder it in rather than having something, because we're talking about real micro size, we probably wouldn't have ends on the flight controller, we'd just have solder points. So yeah, let's remove that, put that on, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so here it is with the new end on, and just to give you an idea of the timeline, it's several weeks later. I had the knee op. I'm a little bit immobile, but I'm finally able to get down and do a bit more filming. So I just wanted to show you how this would work. So I've brought my little screen out. Let's turn this on, and then we can see what happens. I thought it'd be useful to go through what the button does and what the LEDs do. So if we plug this guy in, we are on F1, you can see that. There's Yoshi over there to say hello to. And what we should see here is, you see it goes between that 1 and 2. So the little 1 on its own means we're on channel 1. And those other two lights would indicate we're on band B. Well, I should be on band F really. So if we do a short press, you should hopefully be able to see that little red LED is moving across. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Back to 1 again where we get a picture. If we hold that in for just a little bit longer, you see it now gets 3 LEDs. So it goes like this: 1 LED is band A, 2 LEDs is band B, 3 LEDs band E, 4 band F, and 5 is band R. So I'm actually on F1, but it's obviously quite close to B1. So I've now got 4 LEDs, and we've got a picture there. So if we go to, hold it down again, that should be in a race 1. So if we go over to here, band, that is R1. There we go again. And we can similarly, let's go to, we're now R5, 2, 4, 5. All good. So that's fine. The only other thing you've got is the option to power off completely. So if we hold this down, I think for about 2.5 seconds, it powers down. Gives this little indication that it's got power, I guess. So if we hold that in again, powers back on. And it is a constant 25 milliwatts. There's no power ratings. Gets reasonably warm in the hands, as you might expect, because we've got no airflow over it, but it's not too bad. And I'm running it just from a little 1S battery, as I mentioned. I said before I was going to put this on the sort of maybe the big car, but given that we've just entered a full lockdown here in the UK and I'm not that mobile, I actually thought small car. This is my little indoor crawler, which I've messed around. I've done a few videos on this, and you can tell how long ago it was when I fitted this, because there's a separate camera, a 200 milliwatt Unway VTX with just a linear. The idea was if it fell over it would just move around, and I thought I could replace this. I don't think I want to put that inside because it's still a bit low, but I feel I could put like the VTX bit inside and have the antenna coming out and perhaps have another mount for that, and I think that might be quite cool because this is such overkill for this little thing. Good fun to drive around though, this, and again I could just put the battery in there quite happily as I did in this one, and maybe it'd look a little bit tidier. So yeah, I'm going to go and give that a go and try and put this in there, and then we can give it a proper test with some goggles on, see how it looks. So fortunately I designed the old one on a little bit of a 3D print to model the sort of shape of the roof, so it's very easy to get off. It was just held on with a couple of zip ties. So that's off. I then kind of copied this a little bit and I made a little print like this, but you'll notice that hole down the middle because of where the wires go. So then attached it like this, and you can see why we've got those wires. Again, as I said, I wanted to put it on top of the roof because else I just see too much bonnet, and I played with the position of the camera. You see it's quite slightly back there, and that works. I wanted to double check I didn't have this, all the wires in view, and I didn't want it looking down too much, so I didn't want to see this bit, for example. I just wanted to get the bonnet and the wheels, and that seems to work quite well. We've got a little bit of Velcro just holding out on the roof. The antenna can just flop around, which is what I want, and I've just put a little bit of the sort of grippy tape on here, and I've got something like this. This is a 300 milliamp hour 1S. That will just sort of slot in there, which is hard to do looking in the viewfinder of camera, but yeah, that will basically sit in like that, join up the power, and then we get to drive it around. So let's give that a go now and see how the signal looks and see how the camera looks out this little VTX. So off we go for a little drive around the house, and this is actually quite useful because you can see what happens when we've got sort of poor light. It's lit, it's artificial lighting, but there's a world of difference between this and some natural light. And as we move into the other room, and I'm just using any excuse I can to go over the dog's toys, you can see the colour looks a lot better once we get a little bit more natural light here. And I'm realising that this car is actually a bit taller than I thought it was, and it won't fit where I wanted it to. Just to explain for clarity purposes of what's happening in terms of the receiving equipment, I'm using a rapid fire system on my goggles with a circular polarised patch and pagoda, mostly because I couldn't be bothered to change my patch out for a linear, but generally you get a fairly good picture out of it. And I'm recording with the PowerPlay DVR, which gives a much better frame rate and should give hopefully a better picture, so it looks a lot more like what it was. And you can kind of see the difference here with the sort of natural light behind us. It looks a lot better, And as we turn now back into the original room where I'm sat controlling things, it's a little bit grainy again. It certainly suffers from not having natural light. So to give it a little bit more natural light, here's it driving outside. Now it's absolutely freezing, so I'm back inside enjoying the warmth of the conservatory while this little thing's going outside. This is possibly an angle in a car that you'd only have on a crawler. On a crawler, it's really important to see where those wheels are, and you can see we've got some actual spaces where we can look through to see where the wheels are. I'm no expert on crawlers by any means, but I really did find it quite interesting trying to get round a course just on a fixed FPV view. It's really quite challenging. It's so much more difficult than trying to do it line of sight. And you can see on the scale of this thing that the newly loose pebbled garden is now perfect for this sort of thing. It's like we're going over an alien landscape for the scale of this thing. You can see the suspension working away there as we go over it. Obviously, the reason crawlers do go slow, I think, makes them quite suitable for FPV, because if you were going fast over this thing, if you had no stabilisation or gimbaled camera, it would be horrible. You'd be as sick as a dog going over this sort of thing. But on a nice slow crawler like this, it's kind of, you sort of feel you're in there in the moment. And anyway, that's about all I can really do to look at this camera and VTX, just really drive it around on this little car, and it kind of performs okay. I think the lens of the camera isn't fantastic. It's about what you'd expect from one of these sort of cheap sort of all-in-one systems, really. It's okay, but it's certainly nothing to write home about. It gets the job done, and at a very low price, which is not a bad thing depending on what you're looking for. Now you guys are probably saying, why'd you put it in this car? Why didn't you put it in a Whoop, fly it around? You would have been able to do the same test from indoors and we'd have got more of an impression about how it flew. There was a pretty good reason for that, and I just didn't think it was up to the task of being in a flying machine. Now that's not to say that, you know, this camera and VTX are particularly bad. They're pretty good for what you get for the money. It's very cheap at the moment, but you do get a fixed 25mm VTX and a fixed, I think this is the 150-degree camera, which is okay. It's not amazing. It will do the job. But if you were putting it in a quad, then you'd probably want two things. First off, you'd want to attach it to your OSD, and to do that, what we'd have to do is cut this yellow wire, extend that yellow wire from the camera to our flight controller for video in, and then take video out back from the flight controller and splice that into the other side of the line we've just took. That's that part. The other thing we don't have on here is any smart audio or tramp support, and that's not really a luxury anymore in quad flying. It's pretty much a given. Every VTX should have a way of being able to change channel and power without having to go in and fiddle with the buttons. That's the olden days. So the reason I put it on here is because it is kind of that sort of thing. It's on the toy scale. If you want to plop it on something like a little car, you'll have a great old time. I don't need to change channels. If I do, I can literally just push that against the roof and it works, or I can just take it out again. And it doesn't matter that, you know, the video is not brilliant or that I haven't got an OSD, because I'm normally about, you know, 10 meters away from it. So this, I think, is more of on the, you know, let's play what can we FPV today. If you wanted to go and put stuff in a quad, there are different things that I choose. Now, as I said, this is a very cheap setup, very cheap, and you can get it at least on your OSD. So the other stuff is more expensive, but I think it's worth the money. One of the things I checked out is the Eachine Nano VTX, which is a 5.8 VTX, tiny little thing, as small as what we saw there, except it can do 2500, 200 and 400, and it's got lines for video in, video out, and it supports tramp. The other one, and my personal favourite, is this little guy. This is the Rush FPV Tiny Tank, which is absolutely tiny, but you get an amazing picture. I think that is the best of the tiny VTXs I've had. As far as cameras go, it's functional, yes. Is it any good? No. There is a world of difference between that and this little guy. This for me is the best nano camera money can buy. This is the Foxeer Pico Razor. And if you want to see the difference, this is Tyro, I want to say Tyro 69, and I swapped out the original camera with a little Pico Nano in there, and the difference I had flying it was night and day. So if you really want to get the best for your small quad, then there are much better things to get. If you want to have a mess around, or you really don't want to spend much and are prepared to put up with slightly not as good stuff on a fixed power rate, then yeah, you can check this out. And of course, if you want to check it out and some of this other stuff, there'll be links down below. Anyway, I hope that review's been helpful, and I will catch you next one. Bye for now. Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.